And we had a unique experience with Matheson because I published a bunch of his, well-known titles.
Yeah.
And then he asked me one day, would you want to read my first novel? It was his first adult novel that was more of a mainstream novel. And he was a very insecure person in some ways, even when he became, acclaimed author. And he said that he had shown it to his agent, and his agent said it was too long for a first novel, from a novelist who was trying to publish his first novel.
Yeah.
And what Matheson did, unlike Bradbury, if Matheson was told no once, he would just put the manuscript back in his drawer. So he sent me Hunger and Thirst. It ended up being like 700 pages in book form, and it was a great novel. And we published that, and then later on he found another novel he had written when he was in college, and we published that. And then finally he said, well, I was going through my stuff, and I wrote my first novel when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I said, did you try to get it published? And he goes, no, I just wrote it and put it away. And
One afternoon, write a book.
he sent it to me. I thought it showed a lot of what the future Matheson, would be like. And my only concern, first of all, it was short. And my other concern is that some people of the reviewers and critics, it would feel, even though there would be an introduction, that he wrote it now, right, instead of writing it when he was 12. So what we did is I suggested that we put it as part of the Richard Matheson Companion. So it would appear, it would be published in a larger book, and actually the reviews were very good for it. So we exhausted everything that he had.
And I think I had a book here too. Actually, sorry to interrupt what you're talking about. Where is it? Yes, here. Just so folks know what we're talking about here. So Leave Yesterday Alone. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the one he wrote. That's the one he wrote when he was at college. And he never wrote an autobiography, but there's a second. There are two manuscripts in that book.
Yeah.
There's one called Musings, which is a journal that he wrote on and off in the 90s and in the early 2000s, and it's very insightful.
I
It's
enjoyed
the
it.
closest thing to an autobiography that he ever wrote.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of his books that are autobiographical. The Leave Yesterday Alone, it was autobiographical. Beardless Warriors,
Absolutely,
talked about his time in the army, and then Musings, he's talking about everything under the sun. He even addressed the question, which I would have asked him, but I had the answer already, which was why he never became as famous as someone like Stephen King. And he asked himself that at some point. And he decided, and I agree, that because he wrote in so many different genres, he wrote 5 Westerns, he wrote mysteries, he wrote horror, he wrote sci-fi. He wrote in so many different genres that he was not categorized as in any one genre. And I mean, he wrote things that people have seen but they're not aware of. When they talk about the Twilight Zone, the one episode that is always mentioned is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Yeah.
And that was written by Matheson unchanged. It was not changed at all by Serling, and was based on a short story, Matheson had written. He wrote Duel, which was Steven Spielberg's first major film. And then he wrote the not the series, but he wrote the movies of the week for the Kolchak scripts, for the Kolchak story, and they were really big hits on TV. But when he was not someone who wrote sequels, and when they asked him if he wanted to be involved in the series, he said no. Dan Curtis, who directed the films, also said no. So the series and the movies of the week are two separate and distinct, things that Matheson did. So you asked people, do you know who wrote the Kolchak scripts? Do you know who wrote Duel?
Right.
And do you know who wrote the Nightmare at 20,000 Feet? He wrote like 22, I believe, Twilight Zone scripts, and is wrote more than anybody else except Serling. He wrote a bunch. Charles Beaumont wrote a bunch. Other authors wrote a couple.
Yeah, I think Ellison did a few of them too for the second season. And
yeah. I mean, you've got there was let's see, Earl Hamner put out a book of the Twilight Zone scripts that he wrote.
Yeah.
But Matheson was the one who wrote the most, and but a lot of places, publications, when they mention Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, they don't mention Matheson's name.
Yeah, and that still blows me away. I mean, it's such a hard thing to grasp, because when you think about it, he truly is the man behind the curtain, where everybody understands his influence, but they don't understand who created the influence. I mean, I could ask just about anybody, hey, have you heard of, Richard Matheson? They, no, I don't think so. And of course, you can rhyme off any number of things, and great content. I Am Legend, What Dreams May Come. I mean, the list truly goes on and on. Oh yeah, I know that movie.
Right.
Guess who wrote that? So, oh, okay. Well, I had no idea, and it's incredible. I mean, I think guys like Stephen King probably wouldn't even be the authors that they are, certainly, if it weren't for the influence of Matheson.
Well, King has said publicly that Matheson was a major influence, on him. I mean, Matheson wrote about vampires well before King, and then he wrote Hell House, a ghost story, which at some point King read it, and years later his own idea came to him. So Matheson wrote a lot of things that no one else had had done, or had done as well as he did.
Right. Now, do you foresee, because I know you've had some extremely unique opportunities. I mean, I think that a lot of the stuff that you've had opportunity to be involved with, and the folks you've had a chance to truly befriend, is bucket list material for most fans of fiction in general, but certainly for the horror genre. And I mean, it's like you said, when you talk about Matheson, you can't really say, well, of course, I know he hated the moniker horror, I guess the terror genre, but he was really a genre in himself. But you've also had an opportunity to actually go into his home, not only have as a guest with supper, but you've literally been, I know you mentioned, I can't remember if you told me personally or through one of your anecdotes in your newsletters, that I think it was through both, that Matheson would say, here's my drawers, see what you can find, have at it.
Yeah, he would. He took me to his garage, where he had several cabinets, and you open up each cabinet, and there were treasures. There. He also had a room that was behind his refrigerator, which is one room we didn't get to because we couldn't move his refrigerator. But he had things all over the place. You know, the one thing which, you know, um, he didn't do is he didn't save a lot of things that some authors did. For instance, Ray Bradbury had Don Albright, who would literally come out from the East Coast to the West Coast to visit Bradbury, and anything that Bradbury was going to discard, Don would, you know, would take. Matheson, you know, didn't have anybody, you know, like that. And, you know, there are people who were shocked when they hear that, you know, Matheson's first draft, which was handwritten always, of I Am Legend, after he typed it up, he tossed it out.
Oh, see, I knew where you're going with that, and I've already got chills, and that makes me just sad to think about.
So I eventually convinced him to not to throw his you know, for handwritten drafts away. I said we can use them in a limited edition as bonus material. So one time he faxed me. He didn't. The only thing, he was not on. Had no email. He was not interested in the internet at all. RC bought him a portable email machine that he could plug in, and he used it once, and then he said, you know, I can't do this. So other than a phone and letters, he had a fax machine. And he sent me a fax one time, you know, saying, see, I didn't forget. And it was an introduction he had written, you know, that we used in one of our books. And we used the handwritten, you know, introduction, you know, as well.